You guys ready to make lunch at 12 o'clock? Just, just kidding. You never know. Oh, I'm glad to see each and every one of you guys. I'm going to be honest. I am glad to be back. I love hanging out with the legacy guys, but anybody just get out of town for a while and then you get to missing home and you want to be back. That was us. I flew out, or I drove out actually, Monday, which is a 10.5 hour drive out to Youngstown, Ohio. Um, and it was an awesome time out there. Had a great time hanging out with the guys and getting to catch up with them. And then we had a Friday night service that Pastor Kathy brought and set a whole building on fire. It was awesome. I remember the legacy guys and the credential holders. She wanted them to anoint people, and I remember going up front and getting anointed. And then I turn around and Bishop's handing me a bottle, and he's like, "Hey, now it's your turn." I was like, "Well, I'm out of my comfort zone." But got to do that to you, right? Put you out of your comfort zone sometimes. It's good for you. But then we decided to go get us some food Friday night, and we stayed out till 1 o'clock at Buffalo Wild Wings, eating wings and hanging out. That place is awesome. I tragically over ordered and didn't eat it all. So my wife even, I guess I'm saying she was right, but she said you don't need that extra 6 wings. I was like, you don't tell me what to do. Oh, that's my better half. Might be more than my better half. Um, but we stayed out late, and then Pastor said, "Aren't you supposed to leave in the morning?" I was like, "Yeah, I was supposed to leave at 5 a.m., but it's 1 in the morning, and we are here." And I was like, "So this guy ain't getting up at 5 a.m. Ain't happening." So one of two options: we either leaving at 10 o'clock in the morning, or or we leaving now and driving through the night. But I didn't want to risk it, so we went back to the hotel, and I did sleep till like 9 or 9:30, and then we didn't get back till like 11:30 last night. And I was like, I still don't even have slides done. I was like, I know what I'm teaching, got an outline put together, but there ain't no slides. So there's a few today that we put together this morning for you, but I'm running on Rice Krispie treat bars and Yoo-hoo. Shout out to Carter. Come on now. I helped them out there, and they paid me in Yoo-hoo. I was like, talk about you know me, okay? My wife is my best friend, and you moving up the list, okay? Bought me that might be a 24 pack of Yoo-hoo. Anyway, I love Yoo-hoo. So I don't know, crazy stories. But I'm glad to be here this morning. I'm filling in for Pastor. He was at Pastor Alonso's church this morning. I have not heard. They are an hour ahead of us. So he's either still teaching. He's still teaching. There ain't no way they done. Um, ain't no way. Well, I've seen some of his notes. Ain't no way they done. Um, but he's delivering a powerful word to them guys, and I just want to say a shout out and a thank you on his behalf for you guys allowing him to go out, and because as ministers we need to get filled up too. And so when you pour out and you pour out and you pour out, you got to have people outside of your comfort zone and circle that can pour into you and deliver things to you that you don't get elsewhere. And so right now I know he's delivering out. He thinks he's delivering a word to somebody, but he getting something himself. I guarantee it. Um, and so thank you guys for allowing him to do that. It's a blessing to do so. But you get me, secondhand guy here, who tries to hang out with the teenagers and speak their language and fails to do so at all those things. So hopefully today I won't give you any unknown Gen Z or Gen Alpha lingo. But if I do, someone who's under 30, you can lean over to them and ask them to explain it to you, okay? I'm sure I won't, but you never know. Anyway, so I wanted to on my heart, that God placed on my heart, I wanted to deliver to you guys. Everyone in here knows a story about David, okay? And before he come king, but I wanted to break some of this down because I felt like this is where we are all find ourselves at some point in life, and we sometimes get hung up in that waiting and that transition period in our lives. And so I felt appropriate today for us to go over some of the story and break down maybe something that you haven't heard in the story, because we always hear about David's, slaying Goliath and becoming king, but there are some things in the midst of that that he did and gone through that we as people living for Jesus and being disciples will go through also. So I guess what my title would be today is prepared before positioned. Okay. And so we have to go through a process of being prepared. Has anybody in here ever, I mean, I'm sure you have, but applied for a job and you were like, yo, I'm underqualified, but we good, right? God will do that to you sometimes. He's going to put you in a position or anoint you over a position that you then have to prepare yourself for. We can't just go in and just, I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were talking about how well, God's in control. He's in control of all of it, and he's doing what he needs to do. And so I'm just waiting. I'm like, well, sometimes in that waiting process, God's waiting for you to take a step before he does anything else. And so we as disciples and followers of Jesus have to learn when we need to be still and when we need to listen to God and take a step in advancement for his kingdom in order for him to place us through the door we're going through. Because God can open a door for you, but you then have to walk through that. And if you stand there saying, I'm waiting on you, God, he's like, yo, like the door's open. I don't know, I don't know what you waiting on. So anyway, I want to read to you today just a little bit out of First Samuel. It's verse 16. This will be 1 through 3 to start out. The Lord said to Samuel, how long will you mourn for Saul, since I have rejected him as king over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and be on your way. I am sending you to Jesse of Bethlehem. I have chosen one of his sons to be king. But Samuel said, how can I go? If Saul hears about it, he will kill me. The Lord said, take a heifer with you and say, I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Invite Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will show you what to do. And you are to anoint for me the one I indicate. And so God sent the prophet Samuel to Bethlehem to anoint a new king from one of Jesse's sons after rejecting the disobedience of King Saul. Okay. And so, in the midst of this, Jesse, when he got there, Jesse paraded all seven of his sons around before Samuel, and Samuel brought the oldest. I'm going to mess this up. So, is it Eliab? It's his oldest son. When he looked like a chosen king. Okay, and but God gave a warning in the midst of this. Okay, in verse 7, he said, do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. And none of the seven sons that were presented were chosen by God. And so when they petitioned for him, hey, Samuel said, Jesse, are these all of your sons that you have? Like, these are you know, the biggest, the greatest, and God hasn't chosen them. So what am I missing here? Has anybody been somewhere where you're like, what did I miss? Like, I've done that with God before. Like I've been in the midst of something. I know what God has spoke to me. I know how he speaks to me. And I get there and I'm like, did I mess something up? Like, am I missing something? And so I could feel his pain in that moment. And Samuel insisted that they sin. Well, Jesse had replied that the youngest was still out in the fields tending the sheep. Samuel insisted they send for him, stating that they would not sit down to eat until he arrived. And David was brought in, described as handsome with glowing, healthy appearance. And God told Samuel, rise and anoint him. This is the one. Samuel took his horn of oil and anointed David right in front of his brothers. And the spirit of the Lord that day came powerfully upon David, and from that day forward. So that's an awesome story of getting anointed to be king, right? Like, like if I'm David, I'm like, yeah, yeah. Right? Has anybody got your promotion before and you're like, yeah, okay. I've got a promotion. I'm like looking at the responsibilities. I'm like, no. I'm like, can I give that back? Okay. Imagine if David had a list of things he would have gone through when he was anointed to be king, before he was to be king. That been a tough one, right? Sometimes God's going to put some stuff on you in your life that you need to be prepared for. And so, what I want to talk about today is what David did after Samuel anointed him to be king. Okay. And a lot of you should know this story or have read through it or know a little bit about it. But do you know what David did immediately after he was anointed? He went straight back to the fields, he went straight back to tending the sheep. David was anointed to be king, but he was not prepared to fill the role yet. He wasn't developed. See, we, as followers of Jesus, sometimes fall in this same scenario. God has placed something in our heart, or told us something, or promised us something, or telling us a door is going to be opened. But we sometimes think that if we, as a human generation, we don't strive to be better, because if we know what's coming, we don't work for it. A lot of people are this way nowadays. Is I want it handed to me, but I don't want to do anything to get it. That's not how it works in God's kingdom. We are to be servants. We are to love others. We are to serve others. That means we are to be active in doing things, not just always standing around looking for a blessing coming our way, without being obedient to God when He asks us to be. And so when we fall in that same scenario, God has called each and every one of us to a specific calling in our lives for His kingdom. I don't care how young you are or how old you say you are, you still have things that God is calling you to do for His kingdom before you leave this earth. You're not done, you are not finished. But we have to learn to let Him prepare us and process us for our calling. We have to go through that process of growing and shedding the weight that we don't need, and the things that we carry and the baggage that we don't need. We have to let those things be shed off of us and let God grow us and mold us and shape us into who we need to be for His kingdom and for our calling. In the midst of being out in the fields, David learned to fight bears and to fight lions. He sharpened his aim. Okay, he worked with his sling. He prayed. He learned to pray. He learned to worship. All of these things he was doing in preparation for what God had in store for him. And so I want to give you guys 5 things today that we can learn from David that is going to apply to our walk with God and our callings and what we are to be as a church of this generation today. So, my number one is God sees what others do not. God sees you when you think you're hiding. I tell the students all the time, you don't hide from God. You don't hide what you're doing from Him. You don't think that He doesn't know. He knows it all. He knows every bit. You might hide it from me. You might hide it from your parents, but you ain't hiding it from God. And someone who's walking in the calling of Jesus, who understands and talks to God daily, you probably ain't going to hide it from that pastor either, because God's going to be telling him. And so we have to understand what God sees. And it's not that he's looking at how strong or how big we are. Listen, Josiah's tall, right? Probably dunking basketballs, okay? But God's looking at his heart. You ain't dunking? It's okay. We'll work on them calves. We'll work on your toothpicks, okay? In 1 Samuel 16, we see that God chose David to be the future king of Israel, okay? And when the prophet Samuel came to Jesse's house to anoint the new king, he was immediately drawn to David's older brother, who had an appearance of a leader. He was strong, he was big, he had the looks of someone who you didn't want to fight with, right? Has anybody ever, I had somebody one time get mad and stand up, and I was like, we're good. Anybody been in that scenario? I listen. I don't know why we're talking about fighting again today. It's like a Sunday thing for me, but I haven't been in a fight, and I'm not a fighter. I'm not that guy. But could you imagine having a leader like I hang out with those guys? Like, be like, yo, this is my guy. He's strong. He's, you know, deadlifting like 800 pounds, okay? Don't mess with him or me. I'm just kidding. But God's response to Samuel was this, okay? He said, "Do not consider the appearance of his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at the things that people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." He was looking at the heart, the dedication, the motivation, the reason of why he was going to do things and how he was going to listen and understand God's voice. So this passage reminds us that the way God chooses leaders is way different than the way we choose leaders. God's way is his standards are way different than our standards in our word and how we see things. And so we have to not count anyone out or not listen to anyone because you might think, oh, well, they don't have this large, huge ministry going on. They don't know. No, that's not the case. It's about the heart. It's about their dedication. It's about what's inside of them and how God can use them because they are available to be used by God. He's not impressed by any outward appearances. He's not impressed by your social status. He doesn't care how many Facebook followers you got. He doesn't care how well you look put together. He doesn't care how you influence people, okay, and what you look like online, but he looks at your heart. He doesn't look at all of those things that we see. Okay, we're like, oh, we got 2 million followers, okay, like online, and I'm living this fake life that everyone sees and thinks I'm happy, but really when I go to sleep at night, I'm sad and upset because I don't have what I long for in my heart, which is Jesus. That's how some of those people are online. He's not looking at how popular you are. Listen, Jesus chose some pretty unpopular people to be disciples. So he's looking at the heart inside of you. He's looking at how dedicated you are, how willing you are to say yes when he asks you to do something. So many times we get stuck in a never ending cycle because we are too afraid to say yes to something we don't want to do for God. We get stuck endlessly, year after year, month after month, because we just won't say, you know what, God, I'll do it. I'll do it. You could have asked me 12 years ago, okay, maybe 13, if I was going to be a youth pastor, and I'd be like, no, not happening. Okay, not happening because I just didn't feel like that's what I was good at. But God said, you know what? That's what I've called you to do. That is going to be your next season that you are stepping into. And I had to be available to say yes. If I would have said no and continued to say no, I would have struggled, I would have been frustrated, and I would not be where I'm at today in my walk with God because I would have been disobedient in those moments and in those times. And so God doesn't look at how great and how tall you are, whether you can bench 800 pounds or whatever that might, I don't even know if someone can bench 800. I don't know. But whatever that might be, he's not looking at that. He's looking at, do you have compassion? Do you have love? Are you forgiving? Are you willing to make yourself uncomfortable to help somebody in their walk with God? That's what he's asking. He's not looking at how strong you are and how great your finances are. You can have all the money in the world, but if you ain't willing to help somebody in need around you, are you really being a disciple of Jesus? My second point today is that we need to fine tune our skills when no one is watching. David's story shows us that how he developed his skills and his character during his time as a shepherd. He wasn't just passing the time or doing the bare minimum. Sometimes we find ourselves just doing the bare minimum. I ain't gonna lie, I've been there, doing what gets us by, what works, because we're tired, we're frustrated, we're aggravated. Someone made us mad, someone upset us. So we're like, well, I'm just gonna, you know, do me. I've been there. I've been in that scenario probably more than once in the last 15 years. But I would tell you, all that does is make you stuck where you were at. David wasn't out thinking, oh, well, I'm anointed king, but no one's doing anything with me. No one asked me to do anything. Okay. He wasn't pity partying out while he's tending sheep and all of these things. He was preparing. He wasn't just passing the time, he was preparing and continuing doing the best he can where he was at, which then grew him, developed him, shaped his character, shaped his integrity. For when God called him to be king, he was ready. And so I think about the bare minimum, and I highlighted bare minimum in my notes, okay? Because we find ourselves there sometimes. We just want to glide on by and be unnoticed and do what we can to be right with God, is how I would put it. But that's not how we're designed to be. That's not who we're meant to be as disciples, as followers of Jesus. We sometimes do what we feel is just good enough. I'm not saying that I haven't been there before, but I'm saying when we do that, we are not honoring God. We are not giving him our best. I heard somebody say, uh, I might even read it, I don't remember where it was at, but I remember them stating, and I've always thought this was profound in my life, is if you are giving 109% to God, you're still giving him too little. Give him 110%. If you've got 110% in, you give him 111%. I was like, that's how we need to live our life. That's how we need to go and reach people, is be authentic, be honest, and not just do the bare minimum, not just show up on Sunday and say, yeah, I'm good with God, but actually get involved and work through the process of growing and being developed into who God needs you to be, because God needs you for his kingdom in order to reach the people around you. I've said this in youth ministry years now. It is, I'm only able to connect with a certain amount of people. And so I always relate to our staff that if I can connect with 10 students, but the other 10, we don't have a great relationship, you may connect with those 10. And together as a family, as a group, as leaders, we can reach a multitude of people because we all connect. And then when we're connected as two, and then our 20 are connected, we become healthy and growing and doing ministry because we have allowed God to use us. So you can always be doing something for God's kingdom and allow him to be using you. Sometimes we make our outward appearance for church look good and try and present ourselves in a way that, is pleasing to people, but on the inside we're struggling and we're burdened and we're hurting and we're frustrated because we just bottle up all of our problems and bury them. My wife said something to me last night. I didn't even tell her. She's just hearing this for the first time. Um, that kind of frustrated me. And so I didn't say anything, but we were driving home and we were already, like, we had got a late start because and I'm not saying that staying out late was the problem. This guy right here is not good at getting up. Okay. So even though we needed to leave early, I didn't leave as early as we should have when I probably had enough sleep. I just felt like I needed more. Okay. Um, I could sleep 24 hours straight and it not phase me, just so you know. So I don't sleep great to begin with, so all the extra sleep helps. And so we were driving home. We were already going to be home at like 11 o'clock or something. And um, we got a phone call over some stuff that's going on. And I was frustrated in the moment because I was like, I need to go home. And I was like, I have an outline. I know what I need to do, but I was like, I need to like expand this and put in some of my thoughts and bullet points and things. And I was like, I just wanted to get home and have a couple hours to just rough revise a few things and pray over it. And this situation that was arise was going to take a lot more invested than just going home and taking a few hours to finish up and everything. And so I remember being frustrated, and I wasn't like mad. I was just like, more stuff going on. We're already going to be late. Now I got to deal with this. And pastor called me and I said, hello. And I had a good, I don't know, I was on the phone for 10 or 15 minutes on the drive home. And I hung up the phone, and my wife's like, wow, you're good at covering that up. I was like, I'm about to cover you in prayer, okay? Hey, marriage class, I did not say that. It was a thought, and I put it away, okay? It's like, and so we are good sometimes at masking and hiding things instead of just being honest to ourselves. Just saying, you know what, I'm not perfect, I'm imperfect, but I want to be better, and giving it to God. David wasn't just out in the field doing the bare minimum. He was preparing and he was learning to, I mean, he literally had to fight lions and bears. He had to protect his flock in the midst of that. And it wasn't even like it was this great multitude. It was what his dad had that he was in charge of taking care of. And he wanted to do the best that he could with his abilities. And that might meant by shaping and reforming his aim with his sling and learning all these things to do that involved that, which was preparation for where God was taking him. And some things to know about David before he became king, he was a skilled musician. He was always playing. He was brave. He was a warrior. He spoke well. They say he was good looking. Okay. Some of us ain't got that, but it's okay. We can move past that one. But the Lord was with him because he was dedicated. He was involved and he was doing what God had asked him to do. Qualities don't develop overnight. They were his qualities didn't develop overnight. They were a result of David's commitment to excellence. And even when no one was watching, he was still doing it. We can't get the mindset of I will do it because pastor sees it. That's not how it works. That's not why you should be doing it ever. Not because your wife sees it or your kids sees it. Not because you want your church or your family to see it. You do it because no one sees it. And it's what integrity is being that same person in and outside of the church building and in your walk daily, not putting on a front and a face to look good to people. It's about when no one sees what you are doing. I have been more blessed over the last 15 years in my life because I've done something that no one knew about, that God returned 7, 10 times what I had done because I'd done it out of my heart because I knew it needed to be done and no one else was going to do it. And God blessed me because of that. And so if we're all about just doing what looks good on the exterior, you're not going to live a life up to what God needs you to be for your calling. We're always going to be frustrated or aggravated or have something going on because of that. So if you want to be in excellence when no one's watching, sharpen your iron, sharpen your aim, sharpen your prayer life, sharpen your praise. Be active in your season that God has put you in. You never know when you're going to be called to do something higher than where you're at. So my next point is, point 3 is where you're at now matters. Where you're at now matters. Never take for granted where God has put you at in this season. Whether it's waiting or it's stepping into something or it's stepping out of something, where you're at now matters. It's easy to dream about future opportunities and things that God is doing and all these visions that are going on that you see that God has told and revealed to you. It's easy to see those opportunities and neglect the places God given you right now. I told this to Judah all the time in Pivot. He was talking about what God has revealed to him and what God was going to do and showed him all these things. And I was like, Judah, I was like, I love that. I love that God is telling you these things. But I was like, you cannot neglect what is going on right here, right now. You cannot neglect the people that God wants you to pray for and the things that you are preparing for here, because your preparation here is for where God is taking you there. And so I was like, you have to be mindful of that and make sure that you stay present, even though God is showing you the future. David's story teaches us the importance of developing our current position and developing our skills now, no matter how small or insignificant they may seem at times. We have to always be learning, developing, and growing. it teaches us that importance. And so I have a little story I want to tell you this morning. I remember a house that we built quite a few years ago, and we were in the process of getting ready to hang drywall in this house. And I remember the drywaller calling me, and it was like days, like even I don't remember if it was like a week. It was like super early, like unnatural for a contractor to tell you, "Hey, I'm early." Doesn't happen. Um, and so I remember thinking, okay, well, let's just we'll just come on out. We got everything's there ready to start. We'll just start. And I remember telling the guys, they used to work for us. They're gone now, but I remember calling them and saying, hey, we got to get this place insulated and get everything prepped, and went through all the steps of what we need to do in order to hang drywall. And I remember showing up the next day, and if anybody of you guys seen the Spanish guys hang drywall, them guys are on fire. Like, you show up the next day and you're like, wow, I guess I need to write you a check. Okay. And so literally I show up, and this house is hung, and they had done the ceilings and they were working on the top sheets of all the walls. And then afterward, they'll finish the bottom sheets. And I remember going downstairs and looking, and not a single wall anchor was in this house, which connects your seal plate, the bottom of your house, to your foundation. So if you're in a tornado or hurricane, whatnot, whatever, your house literally doesn't blow off your foundation. And I remember none of these being in there. I was like, oh, that's bad. That's a real bad. And these guys are starting to cover up holes. And I'm like, okay, we have to do this now. Like we have to stop and fix this. And I remember thinking to myself, we need to get it done before they get it hung. And I remember thinking, well, no one would ever know. I remember thinking to myself, nor would it cause any issues at the time until a storm come. I was like, well, we doing this. We got to fix it. And so I remember thinking to myself, we got to get this done, and we wind up doing it. But in the midst of that, if I wouldn't have had anchors in, I wouldn't have integrity for building houses and doing the things that I needed. Because no matter how insignificant something seems, we think about I think the code's like every 4 foot, those anchor bolts have to be in a house. And you think about it, well, it won't affect anything right now, but in the future it might. It seems insignificant, but when it comes a storm, it's going to be huge. Because I don't want a house to be like, see ya. Okay. Now we're talking Missouri, like, probably not going to see a hurricane. But if you're talking like a beach house and you ain't got hurricane ties in and stuff, your house is gone. And so no matter how small or insignificant something may seem, at some point it's going to lead up to something really big. And so just as David was learning all these skills and refining these things, where he was at in that moment was important. No matter if sitting there and moving sheep from pasture to pasture seemed like a boring and daunting task, it was important for him to do so and learn those skills, so that when something went to attack, he knew how to respond. He knew how to confront it. He knew how to do these things. So where you're at right now in your walk with God matters. Where you're at right now will make a difference in the future from what you learn. If we don't learn, we're not growing. If you would put me where I'm at today from where I was 10 years ago, I'd be lost. I'd be like, what did this kid just say to me? But I've learned the lingo, okay? I'm like, okay, he's not cussing at you, okay? So calm down. It may sound like it, but it's not. It's just lingo that they've come up with for who knows why, okay? If you would put me from the past to today, I'd be lost. But in the process of 10 years, I have grown. I have understood the change in students and the different things that they go through and how to combat and battle those things. We've went through some stuff in youth ministry that if you would have handed me, 10 years ago, I'd have been like, do what? Be like, no, I quit. I'm done. Finished. I'm pretty sure I said that after we left the ramp trip. And told my wife, I was like, nope, this is it. I'm done. I'm too old for this stuff. And 2 days later, I was sending her Airbnbs in Atlanta, Georgia for winter ramp. I was like, hey, check this place out. She's like, I thought you was done. I was like, well, what's one more? I was like, I love these guys. half the time. The other time I want to, you know, slap them with my Bible. Sorry. I don't want to slap you guys a lot, just sometimes. I love you guys. I always tell them when I pick on them too, I'm like, I pick on the ones I like. Okay. Then someone years ago asked me, well, you don't pick on me. I was like, oh no. I was like, well, I love you too, man. And I slapped him. No, I'm just kidding. I'm getting fired. If anybody is hiring, no, I'm just kidding. As a shepherd, David wasn't just watching the sheep. He was practicing his musical skills. He was developing his courage and protecting his flock from predators. He was honing his communication skills, and he was deepening his relationship with God through prayer, through worship. And so he didn't take for granted where he was at in that moment. Remember, to grow in the place where you are before you try to jump to the next one. We got to develop. You don't just get a promotion without knowing what's coming in that next position. You got to have some understanding, some knowledge. Yes, obviously, sometimes God's going to put you in places that you're uncomfortable, that you're going to have to grow in. But it doesn't mean that you don't have knowledge about that or can pray over it or go to Him to get advice and help in your need and your time of that. The foundation that you lay now will support your future calling. The foundation you put underneath of you is going to help uphold you when God puts you in uncomfortable situations. God puts you in places where you feel like people are literally attacking you. You're going to know how to respond and stand firm in God's word because you have not been sitting dormant and not learning and not growing, but you've actually been studying and praying and understand who God is and what He's doing in your life. And when the attack comes, you know how to respond to it. You know how to throw word at it. So don't neglect where you are at now in your growing process. You may feel like you're like David, where you just got anointed and God has placed something in your heart or a desire or a calling in your life, and you're in the beginning process of that. You can't just think because not once did David say, "Okay, well I'm anointed king. I have to do nothing else. Obey me." No, didn't work that way. So we got to grow, we got to learn, we got to understand, we got to hone our skills. So don't take for granted where you're at in that process, in that growing stage. And my number 4 point today is God will anoint you before He sends you. David's story has a gap between his anointing and his future as king and his actual placement to the throne. After Samuel anointed him, David immediately went. He didn't immediately become king, but instead he returned to tend to his father's sheep. This teaches us an important lesson that sometimes God gives us a vision long before it's time for us to step into our role. The anointing may come before the placement and the in between the section before you get where you're going is where you need to grow and have understanding and get wisdom and get knowledge and get prayer and seek guidance and all of those things that help grow you into who you need to be to step into that position. Your job is to continually be faithful in your current responsibilities before God promotes you to the promise He put in your heart. We have to be faithful in that. If God would have just said, "Hey, you're going to be a youth pastor," and I didn't go through the process, and I was just, like, "Okay, yeah, let's do it, let's jump in," I wouldn't have delivered what God needed me to deliver. I had to learn, I had to grow, I had to understand, I had to read, I had to do all of these things to help grow my spiritual life and who I was and being a man of integrity and all of these things that shaped me to who I am today. We can't quit in any part of the process. We got to keep trucking forward no matter what it seems like. And I ain't going to stand here today and tell you that the process from being anointed to the placement where God is going to put you at is going to be easy. That might be some of the hardest fights that you fight. Some of the largest battles that you're going to go through is going to be in that gap, that middle section from where God has called you to where you need to be to where God is going to place you. And in any part of that process you quit and you give up, you will not make the calling that God needs you to be. You will not be at the place God needs you to be when that door is opened for you. So no matter how difficult it might seem or how hard it is, you have to keep pressing forward no matter what that looks like. Every season, every situation, every frustration, every gossip about you, everything inside of you, in your soul, in your body, needs to press on and give it to God in order for you to make it through that process. Which brings me to my last point. God will put you in connection with people that you need to be with. He will put you in connection with people who you need to be around. David's musical skills opened the door for him to enter King Saul's court. When Saul was tormented by an evil spirit, his servants suggested finding a skilled musician to play soothing music. One of the servants recommended David, praising that he had all these talents and that he could play. God is the master at connecting people, and you will never convince me otherwise. I have made so many connections in my life that God has revealed to me and given to me that I will never stand here and say that God doesn't place you in front of people and around people that will help grow you, will help uplift you. When you're down, they will bring you up. When you're out, they will pick you up. That is what God does in your life. We are destined to be in fellowship with people who help us grow, who help us change, who help us in all of those times and situations that are difficult. So you can't throw that aside and say, I'm alone. That's what the enemy wants to do to this generation that's coming up. And people always say, well, the next generation, no, they're the generation now. All the generations are part of God's kingdom and church. And so what the enemy wants to do is single them out and get them alone and frustrate them and upset them and hurt their feelings and get them to say, well, I don't want to hang out with people because I don't like people. And all of these things he will put in their mind because he doesn't want them around people who, when they are down, will pull them up. When they are frustrated, will pray over them. He can't have that. And so don't take those relationships for granted in your life who God has placed. When you are struggling, reach out and say, I need help. I need prayer. I need anything that I can get to push me through this season. That's what God does, is connect us together. And this seemingly random connection that David had was actually a part of God's planning for David's future role. This is a reminder that the skills and talents that we develop, even those that don't seem directly related to our calling, can be used by God to open unexpected doors. David was in Saul's place, and he was learning and understanding, and all of these things he was developing and honing his skills because God had a plan for him in the future and he was preparing for it. So I want to think of some things David actually did before he became king in the midst of his waiting. David had victory over Goliath. He lived in Saul's court. David became a successful military commander. He played and soothed Saul's troubled spirit. Saul's jealousy grew over David, and he became a target, which led him to be a fugitive for many years. And David had being a fugitive, David had two opportunities to kill Saul at campsites and caves, but he chose to spare him, knowing that he was God's previously chosen and anointed king. So David had integrity in the midst of that. And in the midst of all these frustrating things that David did, David even still wrote and sang and wrote Psalms 57:7, which says, "My heart, O God, is steadfast. My heart is steadfast. I will sing and make music. Awake my soul, awake my harp and lyre, awake the dawn. I will praise you, Lord, among the nations. I will sing of you among the people. For great is your love, reaching to the heavens. Your faithfulness reaches to the skies. Be exalted, O God, and the heavens, and let your glory be over all the earth. Listen, David was still had a spirit that said, you know what? I might be running, I might be frustrated, I might be going through all these things, but God is still king. He is still amazing. He's still powerful. He is still using me. He's still doing things in my life. Not once did he say, I'm going to quit, throw in the towel, whatever. No, it's easy for us to get that mindset, but it sometimes takes dedication. And when we get frustrated and want to throw in the towel, for us to get together and muster up something to say, you know what, God, you are still good. You are still good in my life. You are still doing things even when I feel like I'm alone or I'm frustrated, because He is a gracious God that no matter what we do has not left our side or will ever leave your side. So no matter what you're going through or what season you find yourself in that waiting period, what battle you're fighting, just know that God is still king. Jesus is still on the throne, and He's still working in our lives. You might look at me this morning and say, Dusty, what are you trying to tell us? What is this? What's this craziness? What I'm trying to tell you today is that no matter what your current role is or what door you have stepped through, you have to commit to do it with excellence. At no point are we to say, I'm king and I don't have to do anything. I don't have to work for it. I've done what I need to do, and I'm ready to get all the benefits. At any point, David could have, when he was anointed king, could have refused to do anything and said, I am better than that. That's too insignificant for me. But that's not what he did. That's not what he chose to do. He did everything for God in excellence. He did it without complaining. He did it without grumbling. He did it without being angry. He did it because he trusted God and he trusted God's timing. We have to be able to let go of what we feel like we want to do and allow God to guide us. Allow God to direct us, to direct our footsteps. At any time, if I take steps on my own and say, well, I want to do this or I want to do that, I'm stepping out of God's will in my life. I am submitted to Him, and when He speaks to me, I do as He asks. I go where He asks me to go. I do the things not because I'm commanded to, but because I love Jesus with all of my heart. And I want to do anything that I can to please Him. So when I step in the pearly gates in heaven, He's excited to see me. That's what I want to be. That's what's in my heart. That's why I've done youth ministry all these years, because I love students and I want the students to find that same connection that changes their life forever. Not doom scrolling on Facebook 24/7 and looking at all these 2 million followers on Instagram and trying to, no, but looking to God and saying, you know what? I might have one follower, but I'm going to show that follower who Jesus is. That's what we need to be. That's how we need to raise these generation that's part of the church that's coming up underneath of us, is train them in the way to go. But if we get to a point where we say, I'm better than that, I don't have to do that, we're not doing God's will. We're not going to be effective for God's kingdom. David did all these things without being frustrated. I'm sure at points he was probably upset and been like, come on now, like, for real, okay? No cap. I had to put something in. I wanted to see Josiah's face over there. Are you embarrassed? Anyway, listen, I'm telling you this morning, God sees what other people don't. He's not looking for someone to be perfect. He's looking for those who have a heart that's fully committed to Him, that's fully submitted to Him, that's available for Him to use. Listen, you can have all the smarts and brains that you want, but if you won't be available for God, how do you ever think He's going to use you? How do you ever think He's going to ask you to do something? You're going to be like, no, I'm smarter than that. But that's not my job title. Well, do it anyway. He's looking for hearts that are fully committed. Many people have settled for a comfortable version of Christianity today, one that asks for little, costs nothing, and never challenges your flesh. That's what that's what today's world seeks. An easy version. You ever all remember the easy button? Was that the Staples commercial? That's not how God works. You're not about to push the easy button and be like, yo, I'm a pastor. You're going to be a lousy pastor. Be like, I want to be a teacher. I've never read the Bible. Ain't happening. We don't have an easy button. We got to put in excellence. We got to put in time. We got to have the desire to know who God is in order for us to teach and give that love and unconditional love to the people around us. But we've settled for a comfortable version today. We live loosely, we pursue the world, we assume that we are right with God. I've had people tell me, oh, me and God are good. I'm like, for real? Okay. I'll pray for you. For real. I've had people tell me that. Oh, yeah, me and God are good. Okay. I, I pray you are. But we live loosely and pursue the world. Jesus never called us to have a lukewarm faith. He called us to deny ourselves, take up our cross, and follow him. Desire to get rid of all your your selfish desires and all the things that we want as a people today, to give those up and say, God, what would you have me to do? How can I be better for your kingdom? How can I serve these people who need help? How can I be a blessing in the midst of that? That's what he's called us to do. And I'm going to tell you this morning, eternity is way too important to play church. It is way too important to be fake. It's way too important to stress everyone else out around you while you're playing games. David literally lived years on the run, fearing for his life, but still managed to sing how great and mighty God was. On the run, still saying how great and mighty he was. But we blame God for our poor decisions we make daily. Like, well, God, why is this happening to me? I bought a $100,000 truck. It's $2,500 a month and I can't pay my bills, God. I'm like, no, you bought a $2,500 a month truck. Eternity is way too important to play church. We got to stop blaming God for our decisions. We got to start submitting. We got to start letting him guide us and direct us and put us on the path that we need to be on. We need to not take for granted the middle section that takes us from our anointing to our purpose and calling in our life. We got to stop just living life loosely in the midst of that and live it on purpose. Execute decisions that are based on what God is revealing to you and speaking to you. Not just doing things because you want to do it and you feel like doing it and you want recognized for doing it. We've become a people of little sacrifice. We quit at the slightest inconvenience. Like, oh, that's too hard. I used to do that with video games. I might still do that maybe. Anybody ever like you played? I played. What was that? I don't remember what game it was, but I remember you had to advance each level, and every level got harder. And at some point, I was like, I can't do this, and I started playing a different game. Like I quit. This is hard. I didn't find any cheat codes online, so we ain't doing it. Am I the only one? Cheat code generation. That's before you had cell phones where you just Google it in front of you and you're like, up, down, left, right, up, down, okay? No. You like had to go log on to the, and wait 20 minutes to get your code offline. Am I that old? Lord help me. But we quit at the slight inconvenience nowadays. We don't want anyone to upset us. We don't want anyone to frustrate us. It's going to happen. People are imperfect. We're going to do things that are on accident, that mess things up. But you know what? I serve a God who has plenty of grace to go around. And I don't want to upset you guys today, but if I'm being honest, we're going to need to be stronger than we are, because we have a real enemy who wants to kill, steal, and destroy you. And him keeping you out of this building, out of this church, out of your Bible, out of your word is his mission. Because if you stay planted and you stay involved and you stay studying God's word, you will be immovable and unshakable. And it scares hell. And that's who we need to be. And so I have a list that I gave the youth group last week of things that we are going through as their generation grows up, that is just being taught, and they're learning these things. And I was like, these are things that we need to stray away from. We don't need to be a part of. And honestly, it's not just the students. It's a lot of people nowadays. We've settled for what is comfortable and what we think God is okay with us doing enough of, instead of trying to just solely please him and do what he asks us to do. And we got people who attend church on Sunday, sing songs, post Bible verses online, but knowingly continues to live in the same patterns of sin all week long without any desire to change, without any desire to be different, any desire to be real. We got some people who say they trust in God with their future, but yet never pray, never read scripture, and never seek his decision or approval when they are making their decision. It's about us. What do I want? What do I want? What can I get? What am I going to get out of it? It's not about God. What can I do? We got believers who want blessings of Jesus, but avoid any sacrifice, any inconvenience, or any discomfort that comes with following him. Like, oh, I love you, Jesus, and I want to give my life to you, but I can't make it this Sunday. I can't read my word today. I didn't get to pray today. I was busy. I'm sorry. We got to be different. We got to want change. We got to want to please him and do his work. We are sometimes quick to receive forgiveness, but unwilling to forgive those around us. Unwilling to forgive those that have hurt us. We got people who give an hour on Sunday to Jesus, but refuse to surrender their finances, their relationships, their entertainment, and their priorities to him. We have people who know God's calling is for them to serve and to lead and to reconcile and step out in faith, but they continually delay in obedience because it might cost them something. I'm going to stand here and tell you today that being where I'm at has cost me worldly things. But I will tell you, what I have gained spiritually far outweighs what I have given up. My heart is fuller now than it would have been with the things that I've given up. But we don't look at it that we want to satisfy ourselves. We want to satisfy our flesh. We want to be happy. We're like, oh well, I only got so many years to live, and I want to do all of this and that. Well, I'm telling you, when your years to live are up, you got eternity to answer for. And if you've lived a selfish life that is full of what you can get and not about God's kingdom, I got news for you. Being a good person doesn't put you in heaven. Having a relationship with Jesus and be willing to unconditionally love people around you and support them and pray over them and be a servant is who Jesus needs you to be. Now, I love a good person, but I admire a spiritually trained and devoted person for Jesus, because that's who we all need to be. It's not about playing games. It's not about looking good. At church on a Sunday or a Wednesday night, or when someone sees you out in Walmart, it's not about looking, it's about being real with people and being real with Jesus and living a life that's actually different. We've got more people concerned with fitting in what culture looks like than fitting in what's the biblical truth. What's right and what's wrong. We're like, yo, we can do this in moderation. I'm like, bro, you shouldn't touch that. You shouldn't be there. You shouldn't go. You shouldn't hang out with that person. You know how many times I have to tell that to students? They're like, oh, this friend and this and that, and I'm like, bro, they ain't your friend. They are not your friend. We got people who assume they are spiritually healthy because they compare themselves to others instead of comparing themselves to Christ. I'm telling you this morning, we have to be real. It's not about getting anointed and just living life however you want and God placing it. It's about the middle part. It's about the meat part of it. And if at any point we don't want to do that, we're not going to grow into who God needs us to be. Listen, David wasn't perfect. He was far from it. We are not perfect. We are far from it. But in order for us to reach our calling, we got to be committed. We have to be dedicated. We have to repent. We have to forgive. We have to fess up when we mess up. You know how much I've heard that in the last like 6 months? I'm like, it's like burned into my brain. Like literally 3 people said it at the legacy gathering this week. I was like, yo, somebody needs to fess up. And I'm just like, man, I'm like, why do we take for granted the middle part of what God is doing for us? We have to be willing to be committed and understand Him. We have to have integrity in our lives, even when no one is watching. That's I've told you guys before. I try to be the best that I can always be because I never know when I'm going to run into somebody and they need to be prayed over or uplifted or help. And I want to be that encouragement. I wanted to live a life that if I was being followed around, I wouldn't be different. That's being real with people. And that is going to get you way further in life in God's kingdom than trying to put on a fake face that people see through. We got to be willing to develop our skills when nobody else sees it, praying when nobody else sees it, worshiping when nobody else sees it. You have to be reading your word, you have to be studying it and understanding it. And above all, we have to give God the glory and honor in no matter what season you're in. No matter what battle you're facing, you have to give him glory and honor. Listen, he's there with you on the mountaintops and he's with you in the valleys. He has been with you the whole time. He's before you, beside you, behind you. He's cheering you on. But we have to be willing to be committed and committed with excellence in the midst of our growing process. And that's where I've lived my life. That's where I feel like me and my wife have been at is a growing process. I was thinking about this even this morning and the other day. I'm like, I'm turning 38. I'm stinking old. They had a youth panel at Legacy and they were talking about the connections of youth and had questions about um, what do you feel is good to get from your pastor or what do you expect or all these things and someone had said um, kind of like a side note. One of the girls had said they I think they like asked the question of like what frustrates you sometimes with the adults, and what she said stuck out to me so vividly. And she said unsolicited advice. I was like, what? She's like, just because we have a different approach of how to do things doesn't mean we're wrong. And I was like, dude, that would preach. I was like, I'm gonna go up front right now because I'm pretty sure I gave out unsolicited advice. But what this panel, they wanted to pray over some of these kids and stuff, and I think Doug prophesied over a few. But they stood up and they're like, if you're 30 and younger, I was like, oh, what does that make me? I'm just a young lad, not a youth. So anyway, why don't you guys stay in this afternoon? Andy, you have something you could play? Get ready. So I don't know. I don't know each and every one of y'all stories, but I do know that no matter what you're battling, God has a plan in the midst of that. Whether that's just a growing process, like I said, you might be in the beginning season of stepping into something new, that you have some growing to do in, that you have some learning to do, and praying over. Maybe you're in the middle of that season where you just sometimes feel stuck. Has anybody felt stuck before? You're like, I don't know what's going on. I know what God has told me, but I'm not there yet. In the midst of that process, you can't quit. You can't give up. You can't throw in the towel. You can't say, oh, well, this ain't for me. You got to keep moving forward. You might even be at the end of your journey where God has prepared you. You've been through some testing and trying things, and God's ready for you to step through that door. And you're just standing there and saying, you know what? I'm waiting on God. I'm waiting on God. Well, listen, I'm telling you this morning, God's waiting on you to take a step through the door that you need to step through. So no matter where you're at, that what we learn from David is in the process, we got to stay faithful. We got to stay committed, even when it's a little or it's a lot. Listen, God can do a lot with your little, but we have to be willing to stay committed to that. And so what I want to do this morning, is I want to pray over those who feel like God is doing something in your life, whether you feel like you're stepping into something new, um, and God's preparing you for that. Maybe you're in the midst of your season where you've been through some trying troubles, or you're